Penn National Gaming, which, they own, of course, the racetracks and all kinds of different stuff. And, they're big on online gambling and stuff. So a while back, they bought Barstool Sports. Barstool has tons of podcasts and shows, and they're really big on social media. And at times have been a little controversial. And so Penn buys Barstool. And now it comes out today that Penn is selling Barstool back to Dave Portnoy, who was the former owner and the founder of Barstool, selling it back to him. And almost simultaneously, it was released that Penn and ESPN are going to be teaming up for a new gambling betting thing called Bet ESPN. And so, first of all, it's crazy because, you look at the deal between Penn and Barstool, it hasn't even been that long. I mean, gosh, within the last year, I believe. And then, they bailed on it already.
They initially bought, that's
true. They did own a
36% stake or something. And then, later on bought the whole entire thing, which didn't go over well with Barstool's fans. They were not too happy, considering them a sellout and everything. I don't get too much into Barstool content. I'll watch some of their stuff online, like some of their clips. Who is it? Barstool Cat? Is that his name? I don't remember.
Barstool Big Cat, yes.
Big Cat. And then PFT commenter, which is so funny that dude has made such a career. He literally was a Pro Football Talk commenter. Yeah. And has turned it in, and he's great. He's like, those two I can watch. Like those two, I enjoy watching them. The other stuff,
that's someone we need to have on the show. We need to understand how this happened.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. And I think he's a big Washington fan, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
I think
Commanders.
Yeah. But I enjoy watching them. The other ones, I don't get too much into the other stuff, and I know a lot of people do, but yeah, that's it's a crazy deal. So from what I'm reading, they essentially just gave it back to Dave Portnoy. So they bought it for $500 million, and essentially gave it back to him for nothing, with the exception of if he sells again, they get 50% of it. What a deal for Portnoy.
It's kind of crazy, right? It's like, so I'm looking at this and you figure, okay, they spent this money and he got something like $100 some odd million out of the sale. And then they have it. And they give it back to him with just that caveat. Like, oh, well, we get half if you ever do so. He's already said, well, I'm not going to sell it. Like,
I don't even. Why would I need to sell it again?
Right. I got everything I needed the first time I sold it, and I didn't have to give it back. Yeah. But here's the big thing. So this became really clear to me, and everyone probably, that this had to be about ESPN, who's owned by Disney, not wanting to be connected to Barstool. 100%. And that's definitely a big part of it. But there is another part. Penn and ESPN, that deal is worth $1.5 billion over 10 years. Penn is paying ESPN $1.5 billion over 10 years for this partnership. So now you look at it and you go, okay, so they didn't even raise any money by selling back. So now they just spent $1.5 billion with ESPN. They have to be incredibly confident that this is going to make sense, because you spent hundreds of millions of dollars to acquire Barstool, and now you just gave it away for free to be able to have the right to spend $1.5 billion to team up with ESPN. It's just crazy when you look at it from a business perspective. I mean, it just shows you how much money there is in this online gambling.
I never understood the partnership between Barstool and Penn Gambling. I never understood it. When it came out that they were, I was like, okay, I mean, is Barstool getting into the gambling business? Like I thought maybe, I don't know. It just didn't make any sense to me. Like I don't quite understand how that translated to, to gambling. I didn't see the connection. But there's a lot of things I don't see connections to that I don't understand. Like, Pat McAfee, and his partnership, like that one didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me.
FanDuel, I believe.
Yeah. Like that one didn't really make much sense to me. But it's like these gambling sites want to be involved with these online format, shows, maybe just to promote, I suppose. You got a lot of people watching and listening that you can promote on there a lot. I guess that's about the only thing I can think of. But
I mean, I also think it's your core audience, right? Like if I'm a gambling site and I'm really trying to get sports gambling people, the sports gambling people are largely the sports fans. So I guess it's like that's my targeted niche audience. Like that is my core demographic. So if I can buy into that, I can just hammer them constantly with, ads and everything else. And really there's no cost to me to advertise with them because I own it. So I don't have to pay for advertising.
Yeah.
And I'm able to advertise directly to my core demographic. So
it's very possible. They do so much other stuff on Barstool outside of I feel like sports is really secondary to a lot of stuff that they do. I mean, they do some good, they do some good interviews with, sports people, but they're not talking betting lines and things like that.
No, they're definitely more about entertainment.
Yeah. I mean, so, but whatever. For ESPN, this makes a lot of sense. I mean, love or hate ESPN, and I'm very indifferent to ESPN. I will, watch football. I'll maybe watch, NFL Live. Outside of that, I'm really not watching. However, I will pull the app up to check scores, check stats, things like that. They're still my go-to for that because they do such a good job with that. Their on-air stuff, I don't really care about outside of actual live sports. So this makes a lot of sense if they're looking to get into the gambling business, if they can spin their ESPN app into ESPN/gambling app. It makes a lot of sense. To me, I don't know. What do you think? I think it makes a lot of sense. That makes more sense to me than Barstool, but.
Well, it does. Here's the thing that I think is funny. I was kind of thinking through this ahead of the show, and it's kind of, you have gambling, which is heavily regulated, and you have network TV, which is heavily regulated. Barstool, more from the internet and social media space, not at all regulated.
No.
And if anything, that has hurt ability to make certain deals and things like that because there might be one individual show on Barstool that somebody found really offensive, and these big brands, they're staying away from that type of stuff. Nobody wants to take any risk. And so there was an interesting quote, Dave Portnoy on Twitter. I guess are we calling it X now? I still call it Twitter.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you're supposed to. The one article I read, and I want to think it was like Forbes. They actually about the sale was actually like X, formerly Twitter. So I suppose it is X.
Yeah,
but I'm never going to call it X. So.
No, I can't. I'll be years away from actually calling it X. But Portnoy went on there and said, "We did this deal about 3 years ago," meaning the deal between Barstool and Penn Gaming. He said, we did this deal about 3 years ago, and I think both parties were like, we're going to take this thing to the moon, Portnoy said. And I think we underestimated how tough it is for myself and Barstool to operate in a regulated world where gambling operators, the New York Times, Business Insider hit pieces are effing with the stock price. Every time we did something, it was one step forward, two steps back. We got denied licenses because of me, you name it. So the regulated industry probably is not the best place for Barstool Sports and the type of content that we make. And look, I mean,
Portnoy is always like, he's always like that, though. I mean, it's always someone else's fault, and well, just clean your content up if that's what you need to do. It's just
But we do talk about it even on this show, where it's like, we know if there are certain topics that we touch on, advertisers don't want to be part of that. YouTube, when because the show is a podcast, but it's also on YouTube and different platforms. YouTube, a lot of times for our clips or our segments, they don't want to run advertising around them because we talked even about something that might be historical record, historical fact, a crazy story, or a newsworthy story of some sort of like murder mystery or whatever, true crime type thing. YouTube won't touch that stuff. And, so you do have to look at it and think, okay, well, there is some difficulty there. Penn clearly was okay with that because they thought they were going to be targeting a lot more gambling and bringing more gamblers in. I've clearly never seen any numbers of Penn's growth during the Barstool era, but I do know their stock price didn't do anything great. And it has skyrocketed since they announced the deal with ESPN and cutting loose Barstool. Yeah. It's really been shooting up today.
No, that makes no, it all makes a lot of sense. Like I said, I think that partnership makes a ton of sense. It's just, it's another one of those things too, though. It's like, it's probably a whole different subject, but you've got all these football players and players being suspended for gambling, and everything now is revolved around these guys playing and gambling more so than it has ever been in anyone's lifetime.
100%.
There's never been a point in time in anyone's life that gambling has been more at the forefront of just about everything that goes on, sports related anyways.
Yeah.
And, these guys are going out here making bets and getting suspended. And it's like, man, this is like, you guys advertise this, and these are the guys that you're essentially betting on, whether it's a team or a player or whatever.
Right. You've partnered with them.
Yeah. So you're partnered with them, but you're telling your people that are being bet on, like, nah, you can't partake in this. So it's quite the double standard. And it's, now you hear of like, there's a supposed like this, secret ring of gambling that's been taking place. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of high profile sports athletes that are involved with it. So I'm waiting to see if that ever hits the fan, but it's funny, but it at least makes sense for ESPN to be involved with that. So I'll be curious to see how it goes. I mean, I've made a bet or two here and there. I mean, I'm not real big on it because I'm terrible at it. So I mean, I try not to waste too much of the family's money on betting. So,
well, here's what's interesting too: is what does this mean for DraftKings and FanDuel, because they previously advertised with ESPN in order to get their odds and their product in front of sports fans. So here's what's funny. In the aftermath, and this is when we're talking about the aftermath, when we're recording this news came out just a couple hours ago. So this is very new. DraftKings shares fell nearly 10% in after-hours trading after the announcement came out. So in a press release, ESPN said ESPN Bet will become the network's exclusive sportsbook, and Penn Entertainment will receive odds attribution, promotional services inclusive of digital product integrations, traditional media and content integrations, and ESPN talent. I'm sorry, man. I'm all over the place. And ESPN talent access, among other services that collectively generate maximum fan awareness of ESPN Bet. And ESPN chairman Jimmy Pitaro said in a release, the strategy here is simple: to give fans what they've been requesting and expecting from ESPN. Penn Entertainment is the perfect partner to build an unmatched user experience for sports betting with ESPN Bet. So ESPN is also turning away a lot of money by taking this deal, because now DraftKings isn't going to advertise with them. FanDuel isn't going to advertise with them, but it does drive those places to have to move to someone else. And so it's it's going to be very impactful for the sports industry in, I think, a whole bunch of different ways.
Yeah. I mean, it just has to be done right. I mean, because, the market is so saturated with sportsbook stuff now. I mean, DraftKings, FanDuel, Caesars, PointsBet, or whatever. There's 15 million of them out there, that, so it's ESPN is just one more. Now they're a big name, but it's, if it's not done right, or if it's, clunky or whatever, they could lose themselves a lot in that too. So, they'll have to do it right. But I mean, they're positioned to, I think, to do it. And for ESPN, I think they could do it well. We'll see. It's funny that the guy says, hey, we're giving what the fans want and deserve. And I'm pretty sure all the fans want is just to hear sports and not political commentary on every single show. But that might just be me that wants that. So.
Well, it's really crazy because when you're looking at this stuff, I mean, ESPN honestly has not had great success when it, involves their apps and all of these different things. No. They had so many remember they tried the ESPN phone thing. They had their own phone service. Then, they've done the ESPN. They had it something else, the ESPN app, and then they changed it to ESPN Plus, and then they try to do paid content with that, but they'll bundle it with cell phone providers like Verizon and stuff for you to get free ESPN Plus and all kinds of stuff. But they never seem to get traction at all. Like ESPN seems to be one of those things that's almost like, we did a story a couple months back about the death of AM radio in cars and stuff like that. Cars getting rid of AM radios. And this is the kind of thing where it's like there are certain things that, radio does really well just because you're a passive audience. You're in the car, right? So you're going to turn the radio on. I almost feel like in some cases, ESPN's success has been people are familiar with them, right? They were first to market. And they're on TV. They're there. So when you're flipping through and you're looking, you don't have to try to find that regional sports thing that's going to show you a score. You can go to ESPN and you can get it all. But when you start to put them in a destination, it does not seem to carry well for them. People aren't really reading and following things like the ESPN app and the ESPN. Man, they're trying to build out their podcasts and all these things, but they just don't seem to get a ton of traction with that stuff. So it is interesting that maybe something in their research makes them think that, that gambling is a little more sticky and keeps the fans with them longer.
I mean, I would think that would be the case. Like I said, I'll be curious to see how they compete with like DraftKings, FanDuel, and those, because they seem to have, at least from my experience, they've seemed to have done it right. So we'll see. Yeah, I'll be very curious. I mean, have they given a time frame? I mean, I know this is all brand new, but how fast they want this thing to come out and be ready to go? I mean, we're looking at football seasons here.
Right.
So it's, it seems like that should have been a deal that should have been done in the summer and maybe been prepared for it. But, I guess you got basketball coming up and different things. So,
well, they say that as part of the deal, the companies are going to launch a branded sportsbook, ESPN Bet, this fall. So it will happen this fall in 16 states where Penn currently operates mobile sportsbooks. And then Penn will pay ESPN $1.5 billion over the next 10 years. And they're going to grant ESPN warrants to purchase 31.8 million shares of Penn worth $500 million, which will vest over the same period. So essentially, they're letting ESPN buy into Penn, and they're spending their money with ESPN. So they're hopeful that $1.5 billion that Penn is giving ESPN, the ESPN's going to take some of it and turn right around and buy Penn stock with it and keep them elevated as well.
I wonder how much stock Portnoy got from Penn, because he's had to, that couldn't have been an all cash deal. I'm assuming that had to be some stock involved in that. So he's going to make out really well.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is he is sitting pretty, man. And I don't know the details on that. It's a great question. I'm not sure. Don't know. Yeah, that would be an interesting one. But he is look, I mean, people knock the guy. I get it. I don't really care too much one way or another about Dave Portnoy. But I will tell you one thing. The guy has built very successful things. I mean, Barstool alone, who in the world would think that you build that up to selling for over $500 million, and then they give you the company back for free? Secondarily, during COVID, he started creating those pizza reviews. He became the most powerful, most watched, most influential pizza reviewer on earth. This dude had the ability to go in, stand in front of a place, have a couple bites of pizza, give it a score, and it became a destination. It still does. Becomes a destination for people from all over the country to go check out these places, and they track Dave's score. There's nothing about him that makes him a pizza expert. He's just a guy that eats it. And then it's just like people that flock. So it's like when this guy, for whatever reason, when he gets involved, it does seem to work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's he's definitely built quite an empire for sure. And I know during COVID he was helping out a ton of small businesses and stuff. So you can't knock him for that. I mean, even if it's for publicity or, clout, as the kids say,
right.
It was still a good thing that he did. So it's hard to knock that for sure. I mean, he's not my cup of tea, but I will still listen to some of the stuff they do. I still follow him on Twitter. It's just not, I don't even know. Do they have a website? I'm assuming they do. I've never been on it. So,
no, me either.
So it's just not, I don't even know what half the content is that they have. I've seen some stuff and it's been fine. It's been good. So, hey, this will be very interesting to see how it goes forward for both Barstool and for ESPN and Penn. So,
yeah, very true. Very true.